You know, every once in a while, you get to go on a hunt in a place with a person that is just nothing but pleasure. And coming to New Mexico with Corey Jacobsen, something we'd talked about kind of jokingly, and then applied and drew the tags. To get to do that, it's gonna be the type of hunt I want because of who's there, regardless of what the outcome is. Well, I'm sitting here in one of my favorite places in the entire elk world, western New Mexico. Waiting for my buddy Corey Jacobsen, who's gonna be here tomorrow night. I came down last night. Season opens tomorrow. I came down, I wanted to have a day of scouting. And I'm really glad that I did, because there was a time, I think it was 6 years ago I was here, I was able to drive a road that went way down here. And now I went there on my scouting day and that road is closed. Now to get to where I used to park, I got a 5-mile walk, which isn't all bad. You ready, Corey?
I'm ready.
There you go. Well, you made it to camp just in time, Corey.
You know, my nose never fails me, and when it's dinner time, I'll be there. Thank you. And what is it we're having for dinner?
Sitka blacktail tacos. So I see this headlamp appear out of the darkness.
Coming out of the shadows.
And I see this big smile, and it's Corey. Just in time for dinner.
That's why I was smiling. This has been a successful trip already.
Oh. Corey brought with him not just a full moon, which, you know, I don't know if that makes a difference or not, but he brought with him 85-degree temperatures. I know that makes a difference in daytime activity. The elk, they just say, you know what? When it's that hot, we're gonna shut it down during the day and we're gonna do our rutting at night. So that just, it's how it goes. There's nothing you can do about it.
About 15 minutes into the first morning here, I knew things were going to be a little bit rough, and it proved to be an incredibly tough hunt in just about every aspect.
I think it was the second night, Corey called from this ridge, and way down below us we heard a bugle, and I'm like, oh no. That means we gotta go down this face all the way out there. And we did, and we got out there, and it's probably, I don't know, half hour before the end of filming light. And the wind's kind of coming down this slope. So I'm thinking that bull is gonna come right down here. Got great shooting lanes. I'm ready. I'm ranging everything. It's, I don't know, 20, 25 yard shots is what I'm gonna have. And I look, and all of a sudden I see the bull, he's coming. Corey's back there raking on a tree. And when that bull hears Corey rake on that tree, he just comes on a straight line. None of this checking the wind. He comes right from where he is, puts himself in a position where the wind's blowing from him to me, but completely obscured shot. It was a very nice bull. It was one of those encounters that happened so fast that you really don't even have time to get set up. You just make do with what you can, and you put the odds in your favor. Doesn't mean it's gonna happen. Just because the odds are in your favor, all right, probably 7 out of 10 bulls that come in are gonna loop downhill. Well, This guy was one of the 3 out of 10 that didn't loop downhill. Just the way it goes with elk hunting. If you're gonna get frustrated, archery elk hunting is not your sport. If you're gonna give up easy, public land archery elk hunting is not your gig. With Corey getting here a day and a half after I got here, I already had, I don't know, probably 10 miles under my belt by the time he got here. And then I think we spent 5 days just busting it, just really, really going. Finally, I told Corey, I said, you know, I've got this weird liver condition, and if I don't get a day of rest, I can feel that it's starting to go bad on me.
Well, we left Randy at camp today.
Yesterday we put 14 miles on. That was day, what day was that for me? 5 or no, 6. Many of you know I have a liver that flares up sometimes, and I could feel it flaring up yesterday.
We got up this morning and hiked up here. We were just planning on glassing, so we brought spotting scopes. And we got into a really great area, and we're 2.7 miles from the ATV. And we're looking across 2.5 miles, and there's 3 herds of elk that all have a 6-point herd bull in them. So we're gonna hike in, and we will be 7 miles from the ATV when we get there, just like yesterday. And we have limited water and limited food.
We got in there about noon, 12:30 or so by the time we got over to where those elk were, and instantly there were elk bugling everywhere. We got down on a mass chaos, probably 4 or 5 bulls rutting, chasing cows, middle of the day, middle of the heat, and we set up, and after 2 or 3 calls, heard another hunter across the ridge from us calling. And as we looked across, there were 2 hunters moving down the ridge, and they set up a decoy and moved back, and they started calling. And when that wasn't working, they got up and they moved around the ridge, and they ended up getting below the elk with the thermals and the wind coming up. The entire herd of elk busted out of there and ran over onto private property. But I thought that chunk of private land that they ran into is pretty small, and with that many elk and that many bulls, they aren't going to tolerate each other in that close proximity. They're probably going to disperse up that ridge. So we circled up around the private and got on the ridge up above it, and just like we had hoped, the entire herd started moving up that ridge. It was the whole rut fest moving right up the ridge, right into our lap. We had good wind. I had my release on my string. I had tension on the string. I knew it was going to happen. A cow filtered through 50 yards below us, and then 200 yards down below us, a cow barks, and the entire herd busts out again, and they go out into the open country where there is no chance of making a stalk on them. And here come the 2 guys walking right down below the herd again. They'd walked underneath them, the herd winded them, and blew out of there.
I don't think I've ever worked harder to try to get in on elk.
Having had a day to rest, I can't even explain how helpful that was to just my energy level, my health, everything. And so the day after that, Corey and I just take off back to where he'd been into the elk the day before. And there were still a few elk in there, not It didn't sound anything like what he'd said it was when he was in there the day before.
Just what I'm looking for, a big 5 point. Let's go find all the talks.
Right away that morning, we hear a bugle. Corey makes a few calls. It's getting closer, closer. Pretty soon you can hear rocks clunking. It's coming down the other ridge and gonna come up this little ridge we're on. He called that bull. It was a nice young 6 point. Just like he had it on a rope. He starts coming, and he stops behind a juniper tree. And all of a sudden he starts walking across. And I thought my opening was wider. Once he starts walking across, I'm like, oh my goodness, that's not as wide of an opening. So I'm whistling, trying to get him to stop. And he stops. And now he's kind of obscured from everything but his rump forward. It's got brush in front of it. So I'm sitting there waiting for him to take another step, and I'm holding, and I'm holding, and I'm holding. And at the last minute, he dodges and goes left out that way. And I'm still holding. We looked at the footage. I think I held that full draw for 2 minutes and 15 seconds or something like that. Finally, I just like, had to let down, and off the bull goes. I would bet if there was only one tree obscuring a shot, the way my luck is going, that bull would stand behind the one tree, even if it was nothing but an open field. Or that's what it seems like. But, it's a blast. Being in New Mexico with a bow in your hand, with, September 19th, 20th, peak of the rut. What more could you ask for? Public land, tag in your pocket, one of your best hunting buddies with you. Bull or no bull, it's time that you'll never forget.
We were down to our last day and a half to hunt, and Randy said, you know, I hunted here previously, and I spot and stalked elk out in the grasslands, and it's wide open. There's hardly even a tree to hide behind. But if you can get out there, those elk will bed under the rocks and under the little clumps of brush that are there. And with a good wind, you can sometimes slip in and get a shot.
It's funny, it took us right to a spot where 6 years ago, wow, it doesn't seem that long ago, but it was 6 years ago. A bull was sleeping right under a rock ledge like what you see behind me, and I walked right up behind him and shot him at such close range. And we're sitting there, and I'm pointing that out to Corey. I'm like, there's that rock right out there about 500 yards away where I killed that bull. And he says, oh, I just saw a bull on the horizon there. He just dropped off.
So we decided to make a play for that, and Randy said, Corey, I want you to shoot that bull. And I think that talks about the person that Randy Newberg is. He's here on a New Mexico archery elk hunt, an area that he scouted, that he knows, that he suggested we apply for. He came down early and scouted. He set up camp and everything. But in typical selfless Randy Newberg way, he said, I want you to shoot this bull. I want you to move out and put a stalk on it. So I think the bull is in the 2 trees over the ridge there. Fortunately, we had a good wind, and Marcus and I were able to move in, and we got to about 70 yards, had to do some belly crawling to get to there. But once we got there, we were at that final approach, which is so critical. And the good news was there was a bush right in the middle of the path that I'd be able to get behind, line up on the bull, and with the wind concealing my sound and my scent blowing it away from him, I had a pretty good path and a pretty good lane to get in there. So I started moving down there. My plan was to get over on the left side of this bush. The elk was bedded quartering away from me, kind of looking down the hill, and I thought, if he turns his head to the left, I can draw, and then I can slip into the lane on the left and shoot him quartering away there. The thing I didn't realize was a calf that we had spooked earlier in the morning had circled around and went and bedded, laying up against the back of the bull there. It was literally covering his vitals, laying there looking right up the hill where I was. And over the course of 3 hours, barefoot, moving on the cactus and the sharp rocks and every other thing that could poke and bite and sting, including the 88-degree sun that was just blazing hot. It was the middle of the afternoon. We started the stalk at sometime around noon. And finally at about 4:30, I knew I'd had enough. I couldn't handle it anymore. My feet were asleep, my legs were asleep, and I knew I needed to make something happen.
I was watching when they left. My watch said that it was like 12:05, something like that. And we sat there, and we sat there, and the sun came, and a helicopter came, and a bunch of jets flew over. And I mean, it was like, something's gonna scare this bull. And I look and it's 1 o'clock, and it's 2 o'clock, and it's 3 o'clock. I'm getting so hot being out in this baking sun. I'm just trying to find any little rock for shade.
So as I got in position behind this last bush at 26 yards, I hadn't been there too long and the bull stood up, which was what I was waiting for. I needed him to stand up and kind of look away down the hill so I could draw back. And he did exactly what I needed him to do. He turned quartering away, looked down the hill straight away from me. And as I started to put some tension on the string, he turned and looked right at the bush I was hiding behind. And then he looked up the hill at Marcus on the camera. And fortunately, all the bull was doing was checking out his surroundings. And he was comfortable with what he saw and laid back down. So after probably an hour of sitting there in one position, just watching to see if he would turn his head, looking for any opportunity to draw, I realized I wasn't going to get that opportunity. And having been blessed with consistent wind for 4 hours, I knew it was time to make something happen. So I laid back on the ground there and drew my bow so he wouldn't see any of that movement, and kind of got in a hunkered position down behind that bush, and just raised up and turned. And as I turned, I was expecting him to kind of jump up quick and bolt out of there, and he didn't. Fortunately, he ran about 5 yards and stopped and looked back at me and gave me a shot. And I made good on the shot, and he ran out to about 60 yards and stopped there and quartered away looking back at us. He only ran another 30 or 40 yards and piled up right there. Incredible. We've been blessed with a happy ending to an incredibly tough hunt. We're well over 80 miles in 7 days. And Randy said, let's go to the grasslands and spot and stalk. And I said, you know what? I'm pretty prideful and pretty stubborn when it comes to calling elk, but let's go get this done. Incredible. I'm gonna get my boots on and get some water.
Congrats, Corey.
Thank you.
That is one well-earned bull. I know it's not anywhere near your biggest bull, but when it comes to miles logged and just the stock itself,
It's one of the hardest earned ones, that's for sure.
I don't think you're ever going to have another stock that will demand that much of your patience and tolerance.
That's what it takes. When they aren't calling, that's, you know, I pushed and pushed and said, we got to find one. We found a couple that we were able to call in, but instead things mess it up, and so we came.
Yeah, either good luck or bad luck. And it just takes an itty bitty amount of bad luck to mess it up.
Yeah. We got enough good luck and blessed with a beautiful bull.
Well, I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
Really happy for you. You're one of my hunting buddies. That means you've got, it just, you know what I'm talking about. Your hunting buddies are special friendships. The friendships we make in hunting are some of the strongest friendships of all the friends we have. It's because of what hunting is. It's a special experience, and hunting as a special experience with special people results in memories that you'll never forget.